Great to see you all after so many days. And today we have with us Sonam Tasi Gyaltsen, a very famous, renowned industrial designer, rather a multidisciplinary designer, who was a co-founder of EcoStream. EcoStream was founded in 2008 by a group of designers, friends, and they have done great work. It's some of the best work that we get to see when it comes to the Himalayan regions, how they are working for the community, with coming together with the government as well as the community to make visible change. Okay, so I'll just introduce myself before we start. I am Vidya Mishra from NID Ahmedabad. I'm doing my master's right now in product design, and today I'll be hosting Sonam for our Bate session. So Sonam Tashi is a very renowned industrial designer, and he is one of the co-founders of EcoStream. He has other brands as well. La, which works around bamboo. There's Tea, which is a zero waste tea selling brand, and there's also an hospitality brand that they own. They have recently worked around a very famous animation film that came out talking about the wildlife, the flora and fauna of Sikkim. And so they're all out there, they're storytelling, they're making a difference in terms of product. They're going out there to students, trying to bring design into education a lot earlier than it generally comes in. And
Sorry,
hi.
such a so I learned something today, something new.
Yeah. That's great.
Hi,
So
hi guys.
you're at the studio right now?
I'm at the studio. That's
That's
the
great. We
studio.
might ask you to give us a little tour somewhere in between the talk.
Yeah, so that's all the studio.
Okay, it's lovely.
So there are multiple other things going on. So
Oh,
yeah, I'll just
okay.
probably give you a little tour.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay.
So, yeah, that's Upendra. He's an architect here.
Hello. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so these are Hachi, Minion, and there's Bai. So this is the studio.
Few people were even so amazing.
Hi, Michelle.
Yeah. So
Hi everyone.
there's different things going on here. Yeah, so that's Tenzing is one of the founders. He's also NID 2000 batch joining. Yeah, this is Bate NID. All right.
So good to see everyone. This is so cool.
Yeah. Okay. So then this is a little bit disorganized. It's supposed to be a retail outlet. Okay.
I remember meeting Kushmita in recently in Raw Collaborative. With
Yeah. Kushmita, yeah.
I'm so happy I got to see.
Yeah. Kushmita is a little bit under the weather. So she's home right now.
I hope she gets it. Yeah.
So yeah. You want to start?
Yes, sure. There are a lot of people here. Very excited to see you. We have Sandeep Sangaru as well. Hello, Sandeep.
Hey, hi Sandeep.
So good.
Hi.
So,
Hi Sandeep.
I have already introduced you, so now I'd like to go straight to our conversation. We'll start it the old way. Tell us where it all started for you. How did design happen to you, and how did EcoStream happen as a result?
Well, design for me really didn't start as a very planned stuff. I mean, it's all started from one of my seniors, Karma Lendu. He was 95 batch joining NID. So he came over to my school. We are from the same school. So he came over and said that, hey, there's something called design and something, and then different aspects of design are there. And they said that, why don't you guys join? So I was still not interested in it. But he said a very lucrative thing. He said that you just need to pass in your class 12. So I said, hey, okay, that's nice. So I was interested somehow later on, once I started talking to him and trying to figure out what is the scene like. So the thing was that, it all started there. And for us, for me at least, design started at NID, thinking like from a completely different perspective as a problem solver and everything. It all started in NID. Before that, I had no clue about design or its different manifestations and all that. And then thereafter, I got very heavily influenced by or late MP Ranjan. I really have my highest respects and my highest regards for him, because I think through him I could really understood the value of design and what it really could do. And that's how it kind of also influenced my decision of moving back to Sikkim. Yeah.
So I read it somewhere that EcoStream happened with few of your friends coming together, and it was just an impromptu idea, but you went through ahead and got it done. So can you talk about your journey with setting up your own practice and your own identity as a designer?
Well, it started. If I have to tell you a very explicit version of it, it all started with this one project that I was doing as a consultant in Delhi, and the project got over, and then me, Palzo, and Sujay, we met at Sujay's house in Sia Park in Delhi, and I was just generally talking to you about, the project that we had done, where, there was so much that we could have done if there was a collaboration, a multidisciplinary kind of collaboration. And that conversation went into like late night party. And at 2-3 o'clock, we decided to call our friends in Bombay, Tenzing and Ranveer and Longbay, all these guys. I said, we are starting one company now. All of us are going to be collaborators. Let's do something. And those guys were like, why are you sitting in Delhi talking about this? Why don't you guys come to Bombay? So that very morning, Sujay, me, and Palzo booked a flight to Bombay. We landed up in Bombay, and we wanted to discuss with them. But instead of discussing, we ended up partying more. So then we, that entire thing, started as a casual thing of collaborations. And then eventually, Tenzing, me, Palzo, Karma Sonam, Ranveer, we decided to, start this company. And, eventually everybody started moving back to Sikkim one by one over a period of 3 years. And then we started the entire session in such a, initially it was such a haphazard thing, that we had no clue whether it's going to work or not work. But then there was this very good feeling about doing something together. Yeah.
So you were talking about you collaborated with your friends and came together and brought to life an idea. And when I went through your work also, like there is a lot of collaboration with different parties. It's different designers coming together. It's the community coming together with your firm. It's students as well. So I know this question might sound very open-ended and vague, but how important is working together or collaborating when it comes to design? And how do we go about doing it peacefully? Because a lot of designers struggle with coming at the same table with other people.
See, the whole, the nature of design itself is a very social thing. It's really not about my perspective as a creative person. It's about collective perspectives, whether it's even from a user perspective or whether it's even from the target audience perspective. It's not really about what I think. It's about what people want and what they need. And then we give shape to those, needs and wants to our own creative process. It's not really about, like how artists and all would have their own individual perspective about how they see the world, how they see a particular issue, and they express, that's their point of view. In our case, we before we come to that stage where we say that, okay, this is what I think. Before that, you ask so many people about what they think, what is their perspective about a certain problem. So that way, it is a very, very collaborative process at many levels. Not really amongst designers only that we work here, but also at different decision making levels. Whether it's at a policy level or whether it's at an implementation level. So yeah, collaborations is for any design studio or activities is very important. And most of the times where we struggle is because we don't have long-term commitments to collaborations. We mostly are moving around a lot, trying to explore things and experiment with different projects. But once you know that you're going to be in one place and one or maybe not a physical space, but in one particular area you want to focus on for next 10-15 years, collaborations will come on it automatically.
So that the part with collaborating with the community being understood. Now I'm more curious about, so you showed us around your studio and we know the people who work for EcoStream and for your firm, and there's a lot of diversity in them in terms of the discipline they come from as well as the age group. So how do you bring everyone together? Because we are talking about really dynamic students who have just come fresh out of the campus. We are talking about experienced designers. So the outlook is going to be really, really different from each one of them. So how do they all come together and bring one design out in a peaceful manner?
So a lot of people who probably be watching this thing would be like, hey, Sonam, why don't you reply to my emails? And people who are probably applying at EcoStream. So the thing is that I don't look at portfolios. I try and avoid looking at portfolios. But yeah, I should reply back. That's a different thing. But usually I don't look at portfolios primarily because I work through word of mouth. So say all those people who have come here have been endorsed by someone who's already worked here. It's because it's a very difficult thing to work in Sikkim and especially with me, I have a very long process kind of a thing, and sometimes it just gets very stressful. So it for a lot of people who actually come here, they come through endorsements or, somebody recommends, etc. like that, and they come here. And mostly, I think my general thing is that requirement is that everyone should know how to make tea. Yeah, but the latest additions, since we have younger generations and everything, are like, some beverage, whether it's coffee or whether it's hot chocolate or something. Something that you'd make for the entire office. So that is for me, I think, a level playing ground when it comes down to working with people from different age groups, not only different age groups, but different kinds of different likes, dislikes, I like to have diversity in my team. It's not necessary everyone has to agree with each other. So I like a good mix of consent as well as dissent within the design process. So that way, I think we've been able to survive so far.
Yeah, it's wonderful how we are talking about a really diverse team, but a very particular context when it comes to design. You are almost designing it for this particular region of Himalaya, for the Sikkim region, which you understand more, or the people who belong there. And so, would you say it just comes to you a little more naturally because you already understand the culture yourself, or is it just the same process? You start from ground zero research, and like, what would you say about that?
I mean, process doesn't really change. Methods, tools change over a period of time, but the process remains the same. And for me, working in the Himalayas or having a vision which is very geography centric, which is to do with the creative mountain economy and, focusing on mountain based issues. I think it also comes from the fact that, the portfolio over the past 11 years has just been about mountain context mostly, and India has 11 Indian Himalayan states, now 10 Indian Himalayan states and 2 union territories. So that's a lifetime of, focus, in terms of, what you want to do. So, and I felt that it's very critical to actually look at a geography-based approach because of not only the rich biodiversity and the climate change issues and all that, but even if you look at the whole pandemic, COVID, scenarios, these are just the tip of the iceberg. There probably could be even worse things coming forward, and the Himalayas had a huge role to play in terms of survival later on. So when you look at crisis, what happened in Uttarakhand recently with the whole glacier outbursts, etc., all that. If we don't invest in design in this biodiversity hotspots, then it's going to be very, very difficult.
So, talking about investing in biodiversity, like giving back to the community, to the environment. Recently, I would like to talk about a project that you have done very recently, the Pokchi project, the film that you made. So, can you tell us something about the process, how it came about, and what is the impact that you're looking at, expecting it to make?
Okay, so it was a Tata Trust funded project and implemented by WWF of India. And basically, what we were trying to look at was, creating awareness about our own habitats in Sikkim. And Sikkim has a very unique thing. Geology. It basically has 3 habitats. We have subtropical, starting from the Teesta, then the temperate, where I'm sitting right now, Gantok and all that, and then you have the alpine. So a lot of times, when the project started, one of the insights was that we actually don't know anything about our own place. Like this bamboos that you see behind me, we don't know what species is it, what are its use, and there's nothing that we the school textbooks or even the teaching learning materials didn't have much. So we designed this entire Pokchi came into the whole limelight in terms of trying to create awareness on these habitats, and the diversity in this habitat. So we made the film, then we had posters, and then we had a tour of all the schools all over Sikkim. And we distributed these posters as teaching learning materials, and at the same time did screening of these films in the schools to create awareness. And so we wanted to create a character which is very well known, and the red panda is the state animal of Sikkim. So it's a very familiar species. So we decided to go with it, and also it's also listed under the endangered species. So that's how it started, Pokchi.
So, can our audience get to see the film somewhere? Like, if you can tell us if it's available on some platform.
Okay. Sorry?
Is Pokchi available on some platform where our audience can go and see it?
So we created a separate a site kind of a thing for it. I can share with you the details with you later. You can post it. So there, the entire process and what we did. So everything is put up out there. So another idea was also to kind of create awareness amongst the teaching community about storytelling, and where they themselves could look at the processes and then figure out their own way of storytelling. So yeah, so I can share with you the site later.
Sure, we'll put it up on our stories for the audience later. So I'd like to talk more about getting involved with the teaching system and the education system. I personally do not exactly remember the project's name, but I remember you presenting it to us some time back in 2019 about a textbook
Hmm.
redesign. You redesigned the textbook to fit the context of Sikkim, which is
Yeah.
a very great initiative because throughout like our education also we get to know about our own
Hmm.
culture very little. So what do you
Hmm.
think is the impact that designers should look at in long term when it comes to designing anything for students or the education, right? What change can we bring about as creatives?
I think this is probably, I think, can be answered at many different levels because the interventions are also at this kind of projects. The interventions are also at very, from a micro level as well as the macro level. At a macro level, definitely you need a much larger team, a bigger team to actually, work on these things. But at a micro level, I think, just this idea of sharing, and your work, and uh, uh, putting it out there in a very public uh, platform. I think it does quite a lot of help in terms of, especially the teaching community, who's like, because of this whole COVID thing, everything is online. They are constantly looking for material online to, teach to the children as reference material, etc., all that. And I know that a lot of NITians have done a lot of work, not only NITians. Now I'm in touch with designers from other institutes, and who are equally brilliant. And once you put it out there on the public domain, and you also decide, what aspect of your work could be open source, so that would, at a micro level, help quite a bit. But from a macro point of view, I think, there's this, especially now that we have the national education policy, which has the intent laid out nicely, but it still doesn't have a roadmap. That's where designers can actually come in, and it's not only communication design. It could be, even textile design to that extent. Could come in and try and see how they can, help in policy making and in developing roadmaps for the national education policy. So yeah, so at a macro level, I think that's how you guys can do interventions.
So when you are working with students, like working for students also, do you think it kind of changes your perspective as a designer also when you get to work with children of a certain age? How does it affect you through the process?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I was telling that you have multiple projects that involve children of a certain age, students in it. So when you're designing for them, does it in turn also change you somehow, your perspective as a creative person? And if it is so, how is it?
I think all the time, all the time. I can tell you something. I can share you with a story. So Tenzing and me, we were working on the state vision document for quality elementary education in 2010, and we had to survey almost about 174 schools in all over Sikkim. And so we were like this very, young designers, full of ideas, and it's, wanting to change the world, kind of an attitude. And so we were part of that team, and we had to go to the schools and map out the aspiration and vision of different stakeholders, like the school management committee, the students, the parents, the teachers, and other stakeholders, the panchayats and all of that. So we went to these different schools, and then once we entered the school, and, you saw problems, yeah, and your problem solving instincts grow up, and then you are like, okay, and I can solve this problem. Oh, you could do this, you could do that. And then you go there, and then we went, and then, we got so excited, we said, okay, we'll do this, we'll do that. We sat down and started the whole problem solving process. But in the entire thing, we just realized that, we are the only ones who were involved and engaged in the process. And later on, after lunch, there's another person who joined in, and he was one of the community organizers, Nima. And Nima started his focus group discussion. And then everybody started discussing things, everybody started engaging in the problem and all. And that's when I realized that sometimes, you just need to listen. It's just because the solution, or you probably feel that this works, that works, you feel that you feel at understanding users, or understanding the context. And in that case, we realized that we were not the experts in education. Yeah, the real experts were the people who were the stakeholders of that education. The parents, the students, they were the experts, right? So we were not doing enough listening then. We just saw problems and we felt that, iska to ye kar sakta, ergonomics, this, that, etc. But in that thing, design gets isolated. It doesn't really, it's not very participative, or, once the solution is there, then the people, because they were not engaged in the whole process, they just don't know what to do with it. So that's that. I mean, every project, the moment you start listening, it transforms you. Yeah, there's something that you learn, something or other that you learn.
I guess that's the base for, like, I would say, user-centric design. First, we have to listen to the user and not put ourselves out there, like our ideas, before we actually learn from them. And that's a beautiful thought to be given out.
Yeah.
I would just like to deviate from this conversation because we have a question coming in, and I'd like to put it out for you. So there's Alam. He's from MDis Product Design, and he is asking, I'll just read it out to you. In education, there are many alternatives which are present already, but none of the alternative education systems seem to scale up for a larger impact. What do you think?
Yeah, because you are trying to run a software on a very old hardware, so you definitely, it will fail. Like, let's just say, look at this scenario of education during the COVID scenario, right? Everyone went online. Yeah, and everybody thought that, oh, now finally, finally, there's some IT interventions, and children will know more and everything. But now, instead of that, now you have very depressed parents and overworked parents, right? Because, they have to sit with the children throughout the entire thing, and then there are fights, between the parents sitting, who's going to spend time with the child, etc., do their homework. Because after you go online, there's no limitations to content, right? There's an ocean of content, and there's no end to learning. And then teachers are overworked. The whole machinery is overworked. Students are sitting from morning to evening staring at the screen. It's a crazy thing. So sometimes I just feel that that most of the times we look at long-term solutions, yes, but we don't have mechanisms which looks at immediate issues and immediate problems, and that becomes a very worrying thing. Becomes a very, very worrying thing. Now, the only fate that you could probably, or the only thing that you could hope, is that you have brilliant teachers, you have committed teachers. There's nothing that can replace that. There's no technology, there is no thing that can replace a capable and a good teacher. that I just feel that, if we had like really well trained and very committed teachers, I think that would do a lot to the education sector.
Beautifully answered question. Just talking about, like you spoke about how we need to look for immediate solutions. Drawing on the same analogy, I would like to ask you, like, right now everything is going global. We are pretty much globally connected, but not just your firm, but also we all know that there is a great need to go back to the local, serve them. So how, this is a very, it's kind of a paradox of a situation. So how do we work with this scenario where we need to go global, but also look at the local at the same time?
I think the best way to start is at home and collaborate with your parents and your siblings and your neighbors, and then start looking out globally. And uh, ideally, if I was Sadhguru or any other thing, we would have said that start inwards. But that I leave it up to you, the spirituality aspect of it. But yeah, I think the first collaborations would probably be with your parents, with your siblings, because I think if you are able to sensitize them about design and what you do, I'm sure your parents still have no clue what you do. They're saying today you're doing this, tomorrow you're doing that. Tell me exactly what you do, and then you are not able to explain to them in terms of what. And that's every designer's story, right? My parents really don't understand what I do, because design doesn't have a very confined boundary in terms of sectors of its applications, right? So the best place is starting at home, then start in your neighborhood, and then start with the people that you are working with, the clients and all that, and then global perspectives, everything will come in automatically, because by that time you would have enough clarity and enough confidence to go out in a global space and say what you exactly do and who you really are.
Yeah. Thank you. That was really enlightening. Okay, we have had a lot of talk about like more intangible aspects of the design. As of now, I am sure our audience also wants to know a little bit about your projects. So there's you also talked about textile design while we were talking. So there's a project called Tales of Tribes, where you are working with Tanka painters for Adivasi Arts Trust. So can you tell us more about what the project is and how does it go about?
So Tale of the Tribes is something which Tara Douglas is actually working on. It's not our project. Tara was here in 2006-7. I think we collaborated with her to, I guess it was the British Council that funded it or something, and we were trying to explore the idea of traditional mediums like Tanka painting and its applications in modern things like animation. Whether the Tanka painters could really explore animation, moving from a very static storytelling process to a more dynamic, moving storytelling process. And we just wanted to explore what could be done. So we kind of identified probably 12, 13 Tanka painters from Sikkim. So over a period of I guess it was 3 weeks workshop, we had musicians coming in, we had storytellers coming in. So it was a very intense workshop where we came out with I think it was a 1 minute or a 2 minute trailer of folklore, Lepcha folklore of Sikkim. So, but Tara, she has gone ahead and with her own explorations with the Tales of the Tribes, and she's working in Shillong and Nagaland, other places where she's collaborating with the same format. She's collaborating with different people in terms of creating animation films.
I would also like to talk about the Eco-Festo that you have on your website, and it's a lovely little manifesto where it talks about really good, uh, thought-provoking things. So, so the manifesto of principles, so I would call it that. How stringent are you? How strongly do you stick to it when you design, or is your process in the form very flexible, changes through project to project? Like, what is the
Yeah.
core principles that you? Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so basically the manifesto really came out from the need to have core principles, because in 2015, after working almost at 8 years, we decided that we need to have a vision document, and we need to have a manifesto, because by the time we had enough experience to come out with a manifesto and with a vision document. So the manifesto came out like that. But one thing while designing the manifesto also, what came out very strongly was that the fact that we cannot have a manifesto which is very how do you say, which is not changing. It has to undergo a lot of change. So that's why one of the points in the manifesto is that even this manifesto is not permanent, so burn it. Because then
Yes.
what really happens is that our entire society, communities, technologies, problems are evolving all the time, and we cannot have the same ideologies to carry on for too long. It will die at one point in time, and with its death, a new ideology should come out with fresh ideas and fresh perspectives. Otherwise, then we'll become those hardcore babas, of design, and okay, you have to do it this way on me. So that is something that I think, especially the field that we are in, where a creative process is always evolving. I don't think we can have manifestos which are very hardcore and cutthroat and cutter types, no?
Yeah. Okay. So, like when we are talking about evolving design process, I would also like to know about you are designing like a lot of places when people talk about eco streams work, they're talking about a firm that's trying to create an identity for the community of Sikkim. So we are dealing with creating a cultural identity, but also when we want a value for design, there needs to be certain kind of a commercial aspect to it. So we can see instances of it in the work of La, where you're working with bamboo and creating lifestyle products. So how do you strike that balance where we do not miss on the identity, but also make it uh, like it's make it contemporary as well to appeal to the audience?
I don't know. I mean, sometimes I always have been having this discussions about traditional or contemporary products, and sometimes I feel that that we've really uh, kind of make these distinctions so clear that it in sometimes what happens is at a grassroots level it confuses people. Somebody who's been making thankas for the past 100 years in their family, they've just been doing it to generations after generation. They just feel that aren't we contemporary enough now, or is thankas no longer relevant, or stuff like that. And then there's another aspect where the traditional knowledge it seeks new collaborations and it seeks new knowledge, with tools and with different things that we want to do. Sometimes I just feel that it's better not to have these distinctions of traditional and contemporary, and just appreciate its creative process and its applications. And I feel that if we do that, I think we probably are going to simplify the context of crafts and of design applications also, when you look at crafts. Because I think what we really haven't, we have done great injustice to the craft sector by stressing so much on this cultural identity that those guys, have been they don't do, they, even if they want to make something new, they can't, because their entire identity is based on the products that they make. And that's how I find is very limiting. It's very unfair that ways. So like, there can't be a better Thanka. A Thanka is a Thanka. Yeah. But that Thanka painter's understanding of color, composition, the way he look at things and he wants to express, I think that needs completely different, identity and completely different, platforms.
Thank you. I would also like to talk about the fact that you have worked a lot with government-funded projects. You worked with a lot of public bodies. So, what do you think are the challenges as well as the perks of working with government bodies for like long-term projects?
Perks, little, very little. I can tell you that. Unless you know it better. But it's not easy. But I think it's very fulfilling because of the challenge that you have. Not only the kind of projects that we are, but the challenge of actually even working with the government. It is very, very challenging, and I think more and more people from the design industry should engage with the government, in working out things, because until we do that, we should stop complaining that and everything, So it has to be, but yeah, don't do it alone. These kind of things that you have to do, you need a team, you need good support, build partnerships, do it with like 3-4 of you, like unlike-minded people, but people who have that, commitment of working together for a certain period of time. Yeah. And another thing I was saying is that don't do it alone, because
Yes.
it's very, one gets very easily demotivated. Because one can get very easily judgmental about people, about government employees and stuff like that. But government employees and governments or politicians are not very evil people. It's just that there is a lack of direction and ideas. And it's just that we as creative people, we have not been a part of the process. We very easily want to stay away from government because of corruption, because of this and that. But it's not even, the problem is not even corruption. The problem is very, very deep rooted. It's so deep rooted into our history that there are so many stereotypes that have been created. So I would encourage you guys to work with the government, especially the young lots, because I feel that you guys, the younger lot and all, are quite you guys are equipped with more platforms like this, where you guys speak up, you speak up well, you're very articulate. I think and you guys should take advantage of these different tools that you guys possess. So yeah.
That's a great thought. I guess we have few questions from the audience. I'll just read them out to you. So the first question was from Studio Clockwork, who is asking, how does a diverse studio like yours sustain?
Through our parents. No, but jokes aside, I think it sustains also because we are from a very small town. Our needs are very small, and if I had to start this thing in Bombay, Bangalore, other places, the cost of doing this and all would be completely different, you know. And I would have to probably talk complete different shit right now with you guys. You know, this conversation would not have been like this. You know, this conversation would have been completely different. You know, because to survive in cities and Bangalore, Bombay, and all, no, it's to have ideas like this completely unsustainable. You know, either you have to move back with shitloads of money and do it, or you know, you have to be in a place like Sikkim where the cost of living is very low.
But then I guess there's a beauty in itself to be with less crowd and think clearly. That's why if everybody wants to go back to where they belong. It's just more beautiful back there.
I think you should.
Yes. We have another question from Sukanya Pasi. So thank you, Sukanya, for the question. She's asking, what urges you to take up a new project or a concept?
I think the intensity of the problem that's there, or even sometimes is not even the intensity of the problem, but just the person who's asking you to you know, take up the project. Sometimes I just look at someone who's responsible, somebody who is you know, very committed to that project. You know, so even if there's no good money there, I just go for it. You know, because I feel that when you have on the other end, you have equally passionate clients and collaborators, some great design projects can come out.
I hope we have answered Sukanya's question well. Before I myself run out of time, I would like to pose some questions of my own that I was left with and we diverted. So one is about La. So as we all know, La is a bamboo product firm of Sonam himself. So my question is about working with material like bamboo, and what we generally see is if it's lifestyle products, it's almost always put out in the premium genre. It's always for a particular type of crowd. But when you are designing in Sikkim for Sikkim with a material that is already abundant there, would you say it is a challenge to get it out there in the market, or it's just easier to create a market for it?
No, I think you know, the part where, you know, if you were making products which are very familiar in the market, then yeah, that it would be very challenging, because then you're looking at large scale productions. But if you are in the process of creating markets, and you know, there are very less risks there, I think. But more so, I think La is actually the product enterprise part of EcoStream. EcoStream is more like the consultancy. Here, basically, we're not only looking at bamboo products, but we're looking at starting with bamboo as one sector for design intervention. But La also has developed, you know, medical products. You know, La, we have done an app for mountainous regions, a health product for mountainous regions, and then we have mobility products also. We are doing children's books under La. So basically, La is mostly like the enterprise part of EcoStream, you know. So it's not really only bamboo and only crafts, but it's all about applying design into enterprise. So yeah.
Thank you. I guess before we run out of time, the most important question of all, what's your message for all these young designers looking at you right now? And if somebody wants to work with you, I'm sure a lot of us want to, how do we connect?
Well, I think connecting with us is, I don't know, either it's through word of mouth, through recommendations, because, you know, it's why I do that is because, you know, I just feel that, you know, when we had talk shows like this on Bate, and And it just sounds like a dream, right? To go into Himalayas and work there, and tackling social issues and applying design and all that. But the truth is, if you actually talk to the people who have worked with me, it's difficult. It's just kind of difficult. There's nowhere to go. And you're just going from home to office, and then it's cold, and then it's raining all the time in summers, and then you don't find this thing and that thing, and internet is slow or something or the other, is there, so it's not for everyone to really come up here and do it. So usually what happens is, when you do it through word of mouth, is that the person will tell you also what EcoStream is like and how we are, and at the same time that person tells us also how you are, the person who's applying here. So there's a good understanding there, so it becomes easy that ways, to come in and work, and plug in immediately. We don't have that ice breaking sessions and all that HR shit that you have to do, team building exercises and all that. We don't have to do any of those things. So one is that. Second thing is, pitch as a project which is very juicy. Send us a pitch which is really good. This is something really great. I would love to collaborate with you guys.
That's lovely. I would just take one last question, because two people want answer to the same question. It's posted by Abhimanyu Chauhan, who belongs to product design discipline in NIT. He asks, can you pinpoint key approaches on how to set up a design studio in a mountain region like Sikkim, which shares similarity with other hilly regions?
Okay, so great. So we have started an incubation program for the same. So you guys can write to us. We'll help you out there. The major part of this entire thing is the legal aspect of it, the registrations, the licenses and this, that, etc., whatever it is. Otherwise, just setting up a studio and other things is not difficult thing. But how do you sustain that idea? Where going to get the finances from? How do you make project reports, project proposals? Things like that. It's very difficult. So not only in the hilly regions, but anybody who wants to start off on their own, but the only thing is, I'll only this thing is only meant for people who are collaborating, who are like in a group, because I'm again telling you, starting it off on your own, you can either freelance and carry on with that, but starting an enterprise or starting consultancies on your own is very, very difficult, especially if you're doing in smaller places like Sikkim or some places in Himachal or even in Jharkhand or wherever. It's very easy to get discouraged. Okay.
Thank you. I hope it has answered Abhimanyu's question. He himself belongs to Shimla, so I understand the curiosity behind it. I am afraid we have run out of time, but it was amazing to talk to you, to connect with you, and we'd like you to have you sometime on campus so that we can have a better conversation. Thank you so much, Sonam, and I'll be looking forward to meeting you in person.
Thank you for having me here, and all the best to you. And if there's anything I can help you guys out with, let me know. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. See you. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye.